Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. Only the Grand Heaven Master and the other most powerful figures were privy to the general truth of the matter. To them, the matter of the Hell Emperor's successor was no big surprise. The main thing they weren't sure about was whether the Hell Emperor would arrange for Bai Xiaochun to continue to use the identity of Bai Hao. After all, the name Bai Xiaochun was very sensitive, and therefore, having someone named Bai Hao as the next Hell Emperor would resolve many issues. As the news was still rocking the wildlands, roughly a month into Bai Xiaochun's session of secluded cultivation, the underworld river materialized in the sky above the wildlands. It took only a moment for everything to turn dark, and massive pressure to weigh down. Everyone looked up into the sky and saw the huge underworld river, churning and seething as countless souls inside turned in a specific direction and prostrated themselves in worship. They weren't the only souls to do so. All of the souls in the wildlands in general all did exactly the same thing. The direction they bowed in was none other than Arch-Emperor City. Numerous structures in Arch-Emperor City had begun to shine with black light, including the Heavenly Marquis Pagodas, the Heavenly Duke Pagodas, and the Imperial Palace. The old dragon in the clouds above the city let out a massive roar, but didn't dare to fly up into the sky. The common people, the nobility, the aristocracy, the Grand Heaven Master, and even the Arch-Emperor, all walked out into the open and looked up at the river. Gasps could be heard in the city, as well as in other locations in the wildlands. Everyone knew exactly what was happening. The Hell Emperor's legacy was being passed on to his successor. With the underworld river having taken over the sky, everything was cast into darkness. Neither sun nor moon were visible, although there was something like starlight that spilled down onto the lands below. Anyone who looked closely would see that the supposed starlight actually came from innumerable souls within the underworld river. Soul fire burned on them, which from a distance made them look like stars. It was something most people were seeing for the first time in their lives. It was with bated breath that everyone stared up at the huge river. They felt pressure that seemed to come from within their bones, or their souls, a pressure that resulted in feelings of reverence. Soul cultivators and savages alike, regardless of the level of their cultivation bases, including even the Grand Heaven Master and other powerful experts like him, all felt their hearts pounding with awe. It was something instinctual, something branded into their blood, something that even the wild beasts in the wildlands possessed. It was hard to say who did it first, but soon, endless crowds of people were dropping to their knees in worship. Everywhere in the wildlands, people bowed in the direction of Arch-Emperor City. Common people and aristocrats alike, the Grand Heaven Master and the four heavenly kings, all bent over in worship. All living things offered obeisance. It was a show of respect to the underworld river, and an expression of reverence for the Hell Emperor. Bai Xiaochun didn't participate because he was still in secluded meditation. And there was one other person who refrained from offering worship. The Arch-Emperor. Despite being a mere figurehead in the modern age, he was still the Arch-Emperor, and he was the only person who qualified to continue to look up somberly into the sky. Gradually, a figure appeared within the seething, howling underworld river up in the sky. It was the Gravekeeper, and this was the first time he had ever shown his face to the throngs of living beings in the wildlands. He didn't look at all like he had when dealing with Bai Xiaochun. He wore a black robe, but this one was decorated with swirling underworld dragons. It made him seem like a supreme and venerable being, an effect which was enhanced by the imperial crown he wore. He truly seemed like an emperor, the type who could shake all of the wildlands. The people in the wildlands were all deeply shaken by the sight of the Gravekeeper. Gasps could be heard, and many eyes began to shine with passion and veneration. The truth was that, to these people, the Hell Emperor was in some ways more important than the Arch-Emperor. After all, the position of Arch-Emperor was hereditary, and passed down from generation to generation. But up till now, there had only been a single Hell Emperor in heaven and earth. To the people of the Arch-Emperor dynasty, the Hell Emperor was like a divine figure, a god to whom they prayed. Hell Emperor, Hell Emperor, Hell Emperor. The sound of their voices joined together, rolling out across the wildlands and causing everything to tremble. Their god was present, causing everyone to be deeply moved. As the thunderous sound of their voices filled all creation, the Gravekeeper waved his right hand, causing a silence to fall. At that point, the underworld river seethed, and a second figure came into view. He was young and handsome, with fair skin, wearing a long black robe, and emanating an energy that seemed capable of suppressing the boundless light of the soul fire. As he stood in front of the Gravekeeper, there was nothing about him that seemed out of place. In fact, it almost seemed like he belonged there. The instant he came into view, countless people in the wildlands gasped in shock, and there were many who couldn't hold back from blurting out their thoughts. Bai Hao, earthly necromancer Bai Hao. So the rumors were true. Bai Hao is going to be the next Hell Emperor. Zhou Hong, Little Wolf God, and the other chosen were all shaking visibly, their hearts filled with bitterness. If they had such a reaction, there was little need to mention the others who had had conflicts with Bai Xiaochun. Thankfully, most people had been prepared for this outcome, otherwise there would have been many more people who lost their composure. However, the Grand Heaven Master and the four Heavenly Kings, those who were more familiar with Bai Xiaochun than the average person, were actually stunned by what they were seeing. That's not Bai Xiaochun, that's the soul slave who always kept him company. The Grand Heaven Master was the first one to understand the truth. It was for the sake of this Bai Hao that Bai Xiaochun had killed a heavenly marquis. That was how the Grand Heaven Master had come to learn that Bai Hao was Bai Xiaochun's apprentice. His apprentice is going to be the Hell Emperor. Even the powerful Grand Heaven Master was shaken by the development. The four Heavenly Kings had similar reactions, especially the giant Ghost King. They had seen Bai Xiaochun close up. That, coupled with their powerful cultivation bases, ensured that they detected the differences between Bai Hao and Bai Xiaochun. Although such differences might not be visible with the naked eye, they were as plain as day to the acute divine sense of the demigods. They're not the same person, the giant Ghost King thought with a gasp. This turn of events was something he could never have predicted. He had assumed that Bai Xiaochun would be the one to succeed the Hell Emperor. He was also aware of who Bai Hao was, and therefore, was just as stunned as the Grand Heaven Master. Chen Haosong and the other top most powerful experts were also incredibly perceptive, and were thus able to come to the conclusion that Bai Hao and Bai Xiaochun were not the same person. As for Zhou Yixing, he knew Bai Xiaochun better than anyone in the wildlands. Although his cultivation base wasn't sufficient to perceive the truth, there were other ways for him to tell. That's my lord's apprentice Bai Hao? Zhou Yixing was stunned. In contrast, Song Ke didn't notice any differences at all, and remained as excited as he had been before. Of the people who had witnessed that spectacular battle recently, some did not notice the clues, and had mixed feelings as a result. Others did notice the clues, and were shocked. Regardless, not a single person wasn't shaken in some way as they looked at those two figures high up in the sky. At the same time, the Hell Emperor stele in the middle of Arch-Emperor City slowly faded away into nothing. It was in that exact same moment that, back in the Underworld River restricted area, in Bai Xiaochun's temporary Immortals Cave, a tremor ran through him, and intense rumbling sounds filled his body as the Celestial's blood hair transformed into ash. Indescribable levels of life force coursed through him, pushing his undying bones all the way to the very peak. When that happened, his eyes opened. He currently felt power swirling within him, the likes of which defied imagination. And it was ready to explode out into the open at any moment. When it did, he could topple mountains and drain seas. The great circle of the undying bones. His eyes began to shine like heavenly bodies, illuminating the entire Immortals Cave. The chi and blood inside of him was powerful to an indescribable degree. Furthermore, he yet again felt as though a mountain were crushing down onto him from above, which was none other than the fourth of the 5 shackles inside of him. He couldn't break through that shackle right now. He would need to wait until he became a diva. At that time, he would finally be able to cultivate the last level of the Undying Codex. Undying blood. I finally mastered the undying bones. He laughed heartily, but before he had a chance to feel very pleased with himself, he sensed that the passing of the Hell Emperor's legacy was occurring up in the sky. Stunned, he blurred into motion, appearing outside of his Immortals Cave to see the Gravekeeper up above, as well as his apprentice, Bai Hao. Bai Xiaochun's eyes went wide with anticipation and well wishes. High up in the Underworld River restricted area, Bai Hao suddenly sensed that Bai Xiaochun was looking at him. Shivering, he turned his head to look at Bai Xiaochun down in the wildlands, and his eyes shone with respect and deep emotion. Furthermore, there were many people who noticed that, and were quite taken aback. It was at this point that the Gravekeeper reached up, took off his imperial crown and then tossed it over to Bai Hao. When it landed on Bai Hao's head, he had no choice but to look away from Bai Xiaochun. As the crown settled down, Bai Hao shivered, and his energy suddenly skyrocketed. Intense pressure weighed down, pressure that surpassed that of devas or even demigods. Intense rumbling sounds filled heaven and earth, and the underworld river churned madly, as though the source of that river were being changed. Instead of coming from the Gravekeeper, it came from Bai Hao. At the same time, 9 underworld dragons appeared on Bai Hao's black robe, all of them howling as Bai Hao's energy continued to rise. As for the gravekeeper, as soon as he took the crown off, his robe turned into an ordinary black garment. His aura suddenly seemed vastly weaker than before, and he looked like an old man rotting away into death. Smiling, he looked at Bai Hao, who in turn looked out over the wild lands and then spoke 4 words. I am the Hell Emperor. After speaking the words, he added a line in his heart. And I shall protect my master. Shocking rumbling sounds echoed out as if to bear witness to his words. At the same time, the countless souls in the underworld river all bowed to him, their eyes shining with passion as they cried out in piercing voices. Greetings, Hell Emperor. The living beings who could hear the sound were all shaken. And then, one by one, they joined in, until their voices caused all heaven and earth to tremble. Greetings, Hell Emperor. Everyone from the Grand Heaven Master to the 4 heavenly kings all clasped hands and bowed in Bai Hao's direction. They knew that for many years to come, this person would be the Wild Lands Hell Emperor. Zhou Yixing's heart trembled as he bowed, and Song Ke was filled with excitement. Although Song Ke was still loyal to the river-defying sect, the fact that he was the pet of the Hell Emperor meant that from now on, no one in the Wild Lands would ever dare to provoke him. Even the Arch-Emperor and the Gravekeeper now bowed their heads respectfully to Bai Hao. Not only was it a show of respect to the reigning Hell Emperor, it was a long-standing tradition within the Arch-Emperor dynasty. Soul cultivators and wild beasts alike, all living things, did the same thing. With the exception of one person. One person didn't bow. He stood there looking up with a smile on his face. Bai Xiaochun. He was the only person in all of the Wild Lands who didn't offer formal greetings. After all, despite the fact that Bai Hao was now the Hell Emperor, he was still Bai Xiaochun's apprentice. Of course, Bai Xiaochun couldn't have been more pleased for his apprentice. And in terms of his own life, it really felt like he had reached another major milestone. My Taoist partner is a diva. My father-in-law is a demigod. And my apprentice is the Hell Emperor. A wonderful feeling of smug contentment filled his heart. It was almost like he was the secret overlord of the Wildlands. What a pity that hardly anyone knows Bai Hao is my apprentice. He sighed regretfully. Although he didn't know about how the Grand Heaven Master had recently issued orders to quell the talk about him, he did know that very few people were aware that he had actually been impersonating Bai Hao. Even as he stood there sighing, Bai Hao, the Gravekeeper, and the underworld river all faded away, and the sky returned to normal. Although the ceremony of succession had been short, it was profoundly significant. Furthermore, it was easy to imagine how, from this day on, stories about Bai Hao would abound. As time went on, his position as the Hell Emperor would ensure that everyone in the Wild Lands revered and respected him. After watching his apprentice fade away, Bai Xiaochun sighed and then looked down at the transmission jade slip he had in his hand. That jade slip had vibrated numerous times during his session of cultivation, but he hadn't had time to pay much attention to it. But now, he was in the great circle of the Undying Bones, and his apprentice had become the Hell Emperor. Therefore, he now had time to take it out for inspection. The instant he looked closer, his jaw dropped. Almost all of the messages were from Zhou Yixing, and provided all of the details of what had happened while he was in seclusion. After perusing the messages, Bai Xiaochun came to the realization that his identity had not been revealed. I can't believe people don't know, he thought, his eyes widening. He immediately drew the conclusion that it was the work of the Gravekeeper. Either that, or the Grand Heaven Master had taken steps to make sure that the public didn't realize who he was. When he saw what Zhou Yixing had said about how some people had guessed that he was Bai Hao, but that the rumor had not gone very far, he realized the truth. It was all a protection for him. After all, he had done many momentous things in the Wildlands, things that could be detrimental to him after returning to the Heavenspan River region. If word got back there about who he was, it could make things difficult. On the one hand, it was a bit disappointing to have done so many amazing things but not be able to brag about them. On the other hand, the people who really needed to know, did know. The upper echelons in the Wildlands all knew his true identity, and also knew who his apprentice was. As long as the important people know, I guess that's enough. HMMMPHH. If I have the chance, I'm going to go visit the Grand Heaven Master. This time he'll be the one offering greetings to me. And as for that 9 Serenities King, I'll have to make sure my apprentice teaches him a lesson sooner or later. Otherwise, how could I possibly remain safe in the Wildlands? At this point, his heart began to pound a bit harder. When all was said and done, he was still tied to the river-defying sect. Although there were some people in the Wildlands that he would miss dearly, there were even more people in the river-defying sect. Whether it was Li Qinghao, Hu Xiaomei, Song Junwan, Big Fatty Zhang. All of them were faces that popped up in his thoughts constantly. I've been away for a long time, he thought, sighing. Actually, the more he thought about it, it wasn't the Heavenspan River region in general that he cared about, it was the river-defying sect. Whatever. I guess I should just get back to the river-defying sect. If I end up missing the wildlands too much, I can always just figure out a way to bring the river-defying sect back here. Having reached this point in his train of thought, he patted his bag of holding to produce the command medallion the gravekeeper had given him, which would allow him passage through the Deadmire. There are still a few things I have to take care of before leaving. And now that I think about it, it wouldn't be good to use my apprentice's face to do them. It was a bit frightening to think about going back to his true appearance. However, considering his high status, he decided that the time had come. Flicking his sleeve, he took off his mask. As of this moment, his true face was visible for all to see. Zhou Yixing has been my follower for years now. Since I'm leaving, I'll need to make sure he's taken care of. And then there's Song Ke. Since I'm his uncle, I have no choice but to take him with me. And what about the giant ghost king? He wanted to go say his goodbyes to the giant ghost king, but the thought of Mistress Red Dust made his head swell with frustration. After some thought about the matter, he sighed. Whatever. I'm going to see my sweetie again later anyway. I brought a reign of terror to the wildlands that lasted for many years. Now it's time to leave, and there's no need to make it a solemn occasion. Shaking his head, he clasped his hands behind his back and contemplated how it actually made him a lot more mysterious to vanish without a trace. Enjoying his ability to revel in his success, he sent a message to Zhou Yixing, telling him to come to the Underworld River restricted area. Zhou Yixing was currently holed up in Giant Ghost City, and when he got the message, his jaw dropped, and his heart began to race. He was suddenly struck with the premonition that Bai Xiaochun was going to leave. Obviously, now that Bai Xiaochun's apprentice had become the Hell Emperor, he was going to go home. And the fact that he was asking Zhou Yixing to come see him beforehand was very telling. Zhou Yixing's excitement began to build. He felt more than ever that his decision all those years ago had definitely been the best decision he had ever made. Filled with anticipation, he tossed Song Ke into his bag of holding and then hurried off in the direction of the Underworld River restricted area. While Bai Xiaochun waited for Zhou Yixing, he sat down on the bank of the river and thought back to everything he had done in the wildlands. Then started reminiscing about the river-defying sect, and before long, he felt his heart tugging him in the direction of home. Eventually, it was midnight, and vast quantities of mist appeared, as well as an intense aura. The Underworld River once again became visible, seething and churning right there in front of Bai Xiaochun. For the first time, Bai Xiaochun actually felt some connection to the Underworld River water. He could just barely sense the aura of his disciple, which then began to grow stronger and stronger. A moment later, Bai Hao materialized right in front of him. He wore an imperial crown and imperial robes, but in every other way, looked just like he always had. An emotional look could be seen in his eyes, as well as a gleam of respect. As soon as he appeared in front of Bai Xiaochun, he clasped hands and bowed. Master, Bai Xiaochun could see that his apprentice's feelings toward him had not changed just because he had become the Hell Emperor. He wasn't surprised at all that his apprentice had shown up, and in fact, would have been surprised if he didn't. What does it feel like to be the Hell Emperor? He asked, smiling broadly. I have a lot to learn from Senior Gravekeeper, Bai Hao replied softly. It was clear in his eyes that he already missed Bai Xiaochun. I'm still not able to unleash the divine abilities of the Underworld River yet, and, before he could say anything else, Bai Xiaochun waved his hand dismissively and interrupted, make sure to treat Great-Grandpa Gravekeeper with the same respect you treat me. Pay good attention to what he teaches you, that way you can learn to be a good Hell Emperor. Unfortunately, Master has to leave. Otherwise I would pass on some more of my special divine abilities to you, he sighed, already realizing how much he missed his apprentice. Bai Hao stood there silently for a moment, his mind filled with all sorts of memories of the things he and his master had done. However, he knew that his master was from the Heavenspan River region, and that getting back home to his sect had been his goal all along. Master, he said in a serious tone, you need to be careful on your way back. The Heavenspan River region is a very different place. I'll do my best to master the Underworld River divine abilities, and before long, I'll be able to send my mind anywhere in the world. Bai Xiaochun laughed heartily. The two of them chatted a bit more. Obviously, the moment of departure was coming. Bai Xiaochun spent most of the time exhorting Bai Hao to become a good Hell Emperor. As for Bai Hao, he was obviously worried that the trip back to the Heavenspan River region wasn't going to be safe, and offered a lot of advice about what to do. It was just like old times when they would work on various problems and issues together. After a bit of time passed, Bai Hao suddenly said, "Master, remember Zhao Xianglin and Lu Yang? And that Chen Haosong? They treated you disrespectfully on multiple occasions. I'll definitely make sure they regret that. And as for Sect Mother Shu Shan, and Sect Mother Chen Manyao, and Sect Mother Zhou Zimo, I'll watch out for them for you. If anybody dares to harbor any evil intentions, I'll take action immediately. Apprentice will also take good care of the giant Ghost King. About those chosen like Zhou Hong, well, they provoked you over and over, Master. Don't worry, I won't let them get away with what they did." Bai Hao had clearly paid very close attention to everyone who had either caused problems for his master, or who had treated him with kindness. Most other masters in the world would remind their apprentices of the old saying, "A great man does not bear petty grudges," but Bai Xiaochun was actually very pleased by what he was hearing, and his eyes gleamed with approval. "Excellent. Don't let any of those people off the hook easily. And don't forget that Kadr the Nine Serenities King. Make sure to find an opportunity to give him a good thrashing." Master and apprentice went on to have a long discussion about how to teach all of these people a lesson. In the end, Bai Xiaochun was very pleased, and couldn't help but marvel at how well his apprentice understood him. "Oh right, Master, I almost forgot. With the power of the underworld river that I have at my disposal, and with the advice of Senior Gravekeeper, I've already created the formulas for 20 and 21 colored flame." Although he spoke the words casually, the truth was that one of the reasons he hadn't mastered the underworld river divine abilities yet was that he had been spending so much time using the underworld river power to work on those flame formulas. He had produced both formulas in only a month. Unfortunately, it seems that 21 colored flame is the limit. I'm not sure why, and I think you won't be able to tell for sure until after you actually conjure that flame. As for 22 colored flame, even Senior Gravekeeper didn't have anything to say about it. 22 colored flame is just too difficult for me right now. Hopefully you can give me some more time to work on it." Bai Hao made a grasping gesture, and a jade slip materialized out of thin air. Bai Xiaochun was shaken. Considering how high his skill in flame conjuring already was, he knew that things got more difficult as they went along. The fact that Bai Hao had been able to create these two formulas in such a short time meant that he must have expended significant effort. A warm look could be seen in his eyes as he accepted the jade slip and then looked at his apprentice. "How thoughtful of you, Hao," he said softly. Bai Hao was very pleased with these words. Although he had become the Hell Emperor, in his heart, everything was just like before. A kind word of approval from Bai Xiaochun was enough to make him very happy. "Master, it's still early. Since nobody understands 20 colored flame better than me right now, let's take advantage of this opportunity to conjure it together. What do you say?" After a moment of thought, Bai Xiaochun nodded. Right there on the banks of the underworld river, master and apprentice worked on their last flame conjuring together. Everything went very smoothly. After all, they had been thinking about this type of flame for a very long time. And now that Bai Hao commanded the underworld river, he had plenty of souls at his disposal. In only a few days' time, Bai Xiaochun successfully conjured a 20-colored flame, which caused bright light to fill the sky and the lands to shake. 20-colored flame was the highest level for earthly necromancers. In the current Arch-Emperor dynasty, there was only one other necromancer who could conjure it. With Bai Xiaochun able to do so, there were now two. If he pushed past this level and conjured a 21-colored flame, then he would become a legendary, never-before-seen, heavenly necromancer. According to the legends, if one could use a 21-colored flame to perform a spirit enhancement on a nascent soul, one could immediately break through to the Diva realm. Of course, it was just a legend. No one had done it successfully. Filled with excitement, Bai Xiaochun went on to work on a 21-colored flame. However, 21-colored flame was very difficult. Even with the formula and Bai Hao's help, Bai Xiaochun could do nothing more than start to get familiar with the process. Success was not something that could be had in a few short days. In order to make sure that his master could continue to work on flame conjuring after leaving the wildlands, Bai Hao hid the fact that he was gritting his teeth from effort, and finally called upon the underworld river divine abilities he knew. He summoned a mind-boggling number of souls from inside, which he gave to Bai Xiaochun to use in flame conjuring. Even Bai Xiaochun gasped at the number of souls. As long as he didn't fail too many times, he definitely had enough to eventually conjure a 21-colored flame. It was at just about this time that Zhou Yixing finally showed up. Bai Xiaochun sensed Zhou Yixing almost as soon as he stepped into the underworld river restricted area. As for Zhou Yixing, he immediately caught sight of both Bai Xiaochun and Bai Hao. In that instant, Zhou Yixing's heart leapt. He knew exactly who Bai Hao was. He was a figure of unparalleled power and importance in the wildlands. So, Bai Hao really is the Hell Emperor. And Milord really is his master. Although he had speculated all of these things before, to see it confirmed with his own eyes caused his heart to tremble with shock. Normally speaking, he would never be able to even enter the presence of someone as important as the Hell Emperor. Trembling, he hurried forward toward the two. However, he didn't forget the relationship between Bai Xiaochun and Bai Hao. The first person he offered formal greetings to was Bai Xiaochun, and after that, Bai Hao. Yixing offers greetings, milord. Greetings, exalted Hell Emperor. He ducked his head nervously, unable to conceal his excitement. Zhou Yixing's respectful and excited attitude was quite pleasing to Bai Xiaochun. Although he couldn't go and tell everyone how important he was now, to be so adored by people close to him was good enough. What about my care? He asked. Did you bring him along too? Of course, he couldn't wait to see how Song Ke would react upon finding out who he was. As for Bai Hao, a strange expression could be seen on his face. However, he understood his master well, and cooperated in full, allowing the impressive aura of the Hell Emperor to erupt out in full force. Zhou Yixing gasped, his respect deepening as he quickly pulled Song Ke out of his bag of holding. Song Ke had only been in the bag of holding for a few days, so when he came out, he wasn't gasping for breath like he often had in the past. He had grown used to spending time inside bags of holding, and actually liked it to some degree. Besides, considering all of the cultivation resources he had benefited from, all traces of his previous ordeal were gone, and his cultivation base had even made progress. He was now very close to the mid-nascent soul stage. As soon as he was out in the open, he plastered an expression of respect onto his face, laying eyes, not on Bai Xiaochun, but Bai Hao. He was aware of the fact that Bai Hao had become the Hell Emperor, and it filled his heart with excitement. However, it was at this point that he noticed a familiar face next to Bai Hao. His eyes widened, and he even wondered if he was seeing things. When he looked closer, he began to tremble, and then slowly reached out and pointed at Bai Xiaochun. Zhou Yixing remained off to the side in silent introspection, not daring to interfere with this reunion. As for Bai Hao, his expression grew more awkward. However, he knew that Bai Xiaochun was obviously relishing this moment, and therefore, he held back from saying anything. You. Song Ke breathed. He really had not expected to see Bai Xiaochun here, it was so unexpected that it threw his mind into chaos. In fact, because of that, he didn't notice at all how Zhou Yixing and Bai Hao were reacting. Bai Xiaochun cleared his throat, smiled, and said, "Hi, Care." Inside, he was feeling incomparably wonderful. As soon as Song Ke heard himself being called Care, he was pushed to the point of exploding. However, after everything he had experienced in the wildlands, he felt as if he had grown up quite a bit. Therefore, he suppressed his displeasure and, brimming with confidence, he yelled, "How dare you show up here in the Hell Emperor's presence?" After all, he and Bai Xiaochun were both fellow disciples of the river-defying sect. Although he was not very happy to see him, and in fact didn't even speak his name, he at least decided to vaguely point out that Bai Hao was the Hell Emperor. I gave him his chance, he thought. If he's smart, he'll flee immediately, or at least figure out a way to resolve the situation. If not, then he'll be dead, and it won't be my fault. With that, he simply stared at Bai Xiaochun, inwardly shaking his head at how the two of them now existed on totally different levels. The fact that he had come to be the Hell Emperor's pet gave him a status that Bai Xiaochun couldn't even compare to. In fact, it was highly likely that he would soon have the chance to crush Bai Xiaochun underfoot, just like he'd always wanted to. It's just fate, he said to himself. Bai Xiaochun, Bai Xiaochun. You're just unlucky. You never managed to be anything more than a fugitive in the wildlands, with everyone running around trying to kill you. As for me, I managed to become the pet of the Hell Emperor. Considering my important position, I'm more powerful than you can even imagine. A look of pity appeared in Song Q's eyes as he looked down his nose at Bai Xiaochun. Then he sighed inwardly. Considering their past, he knew that if he could manage to save Bai Xiaochun, he probably should. After all, they were both from the river-defying sect. It was roughly at this point that, all of a sudden, he began to wonder why it was that Bai Xiaochun was right here in Bai Hao's presence, and that there didn't seem to be any conflicts or tension. Just when he was about to ponder the subject, Bai Xiaochun cleared his throat. By this point, Bai Xiaochun could tell based on what he knew about Song Ke that he wasn't going to try to do anything villainous. Considering that, his impression of Song Ke improved. Furthermore, considering that they were at a critical moment, and that he was Song Q's uncle, he suddenly felt a bit protective. Whatever, he thought. I guess I can do without his respect. Feeling very much like he was acting in the best interests of his nephew, he glanced at Bai Hao and then pointed at Zhou Yixing. However, this Zhou Yixing has been my follower for years. He was always there to support me and did many things for me. Since I'm leaving, I hope that you can accept him as a follower. When Zhou Yixing heard that, it was like music to his ears. His heart trembled with joy, and he felt like he had been struck with the greatest luck in the world. Profound gratitude welled up in his heart, to the point where his knees began to shake. My lord, many thanks, my lord. He was a true Wildlander necromancer, and therefore, felt complete adoration and fervor for the Hell Emperor, more so than Bai Xiaochun would ever be able to comprehend. Therefore, when he heard Bai Xiaochun's words, he simply couldn't remain calm. He knew that if he worked for the Hell Emperor, he would essentially be like an emissary in the world of the living. It was an extremely high honor that would put him very close to the level of the 4 heavenly kings. In fact, from now on, his clan would never again dare to treat him as the crown prince of the clan. That title wouldn't befit someone of his standing. He would be the person his clan relied on, both patriarchs and ordinary clan members alike. Everyone would treat him with the utmost respect. As Zhou Yixing went wild with joy, Song Ke stared with eyes as wide as saucers. In that moment, his confidence and arrogance all faltered, and he suddenly felt like he might collapse mentally. A sensation of disbelief rose up in his heart, and he actually began to wonder if he was hallucinating. Did you just call the Hell Emperor Howard? He asked. Then turned from Bai Xiaochun to look at Zhou Yixing. And did you just call him my lord? Is this some sort of mistake? This seems off. He drifted off into speechlessness, grabbing his head in his hands to stop it from spinning. He was feeling so profoundly and utterly shaken that he could hardly take it. Startled, and a bit worried, Bai Xiaochun realized that this was clearly a huge blow to Song Ke, and quickly tried to come up with a way to explain the situation. Despite how excited Zhou Yixing was, Song Ke's words caused a strange expression to appear on his face. Sighing inwardly, he suddenly felt very sorry for Song Ke. Bai Hao felt the same. However, he smiled wryly, turned to Bai Xiaochun, and offered formal greetings with clasped hands. Orders received, master. When it came to who was his emissary in the world of the living, if anyone else had provided the suggestion, Bai Hao would have put a lot of thought into the matter. But since Bai Xiaochun had suggested it be Zhou Yixing, he didn't bother to worry about it. Furthermore, he accepted the instructions from Bai Xiaochun in the same way that he always had in the past. And his response struck Song Ke like zillions of lightning bolts. Did you just call him master? Song Ke wasn't even aware that he was talking. He stood there, staring blankly at Bai Hao, shaking physically and almost forgetting to breathe. No, this has to be a mistake. The world seemed to be spinning around him, as though he had broken through some barrier of incredulity that he hadn't even realized existed. He didn't want to think too deeply about how these 3 people were connected, but he simply couldn't control his own train of thought. Bai Hao was the only person who Zhou Yixing would call my lord. And the fact that Bai Hao had called Bai Xiaochun master made everything even more clear. Bai Xiaochun was Bai Hao's master, and was Zhou Yixing's lord. Song Ke felt like his mind was filled with crashing bolts of lightning, leaving him standing there with a blank look on his face. As for Bai Xiaochun, he couldn't let that happen, so he hurried forward to explain. Calm down, Care, let me explain. You. Song Ke pointed at Bai Xiaochun, his eyes turning red. Before Bai Xiaochun could offer any sort of explanation, Song Ke shouted, Bai Xiaochun. Tell me the truth. Were you impersonating Bai Hao before? Song Ke was teetering on the verge of madness as the question of Bai Hao's identity pounded at his mind. If it was true that Bai Hao was Bai Xiaochun, and that he had become Bai Xiaochun's pet, and had even stretched his head out to have his hair tousled more deeply by him, then Song Ke's world would surely collapse. Absolutely not, Bai Xiaochun said without a moment of hesitation, shaking his head vigorously. Worried that Song Ke wouldn't believe him, he pointed back at Bai Hao and Zhou Yixing. I'm serious. Ask them. I wasn't impersonating Bai Hao at all. And this is my first time seeing you here in the Wildlands. I'm not joking. It's the truth. As he spoke, he didn't blink even a single time, making his words seem very sincere. Panting, Song Ke glared at Bai Xiaochun for a moment, and then turned to look at Bai Hao. Bai Hao blinked a few times. He knew that Bai Xiaochun was Song Ke's uncle, and therefore didn't dare to tell him the truth. He quickly nodded, which caused Song Ke to relax a bit. However, he still wasn't completely convinced, and looked to Zhou Yixing for further confirmation. Zhou Yixing was actually feeling quite stunned himself, although not as much as Song Ke. Bai Hao's words of orders received, were still ringing loudly in his mind. Neither Bai Hao nor Bai Xiaochun had thought very much about that. It was the way Bai Hao usually spoke. But when Zhou Yixing heard it, it filled his heart with pounding waves of shock that threatened to overwhelm him. In fact, he almost wondered if he had been hearing things. Bai Hao was the Hell Emperor. As far as Zhou Yixing was concerned, even if he did accept directions from Bai Xiaochun, there was no need for him to say anything more than, "all right," or something like that. Maybe he could even just nod. Never could Zhou Yixing have imagined that Bai Hao would outright say that he would follow orders. In fact, just about anyone in the wildlands who heard that would be stunned. It immediately led Zhou Yixing to the realization that the true overlord of the wildlands was Bai Xiaochun. Zhou Yixing simply couldn't get control of himself at the moment. Therefore, when Song Ke looked over at him and realized that he wasn't saying anything, his heart suddenly began to pound, and he started shaking again. White steam even began to rise from the top of his head. Bai Xiaochun's nervousness mounted. Worried that Song Ke had been offended too deeply, and couldn't handle the truth, he glared over at Zhou Yixing. "What are you doing, Zhou Yixing?" he shouted. "I said that I wasn't impersonating Bai Hao, and this is my first time seeing Song Ke in the wildlands. Back me up here." Bai Xiaochun's shout tore Zhou Yixing out of his reverie. He immediately began to nod, and in fact, worried that Song Ke wouldn't believe him, he thumped himself on the chest and loudly said, "I, Zhou Yixing, hereby swear that my lord never once impersonated Bai Hao." When Song Ke heard Zhou Yixing's words echoing back and forth, he relaxed some more. His mind was in chaos, and he could hardly think straight. Therefore, the evidence provided by Bai Hao and Zhou Yixing was like a branch extended to a drowning man. He didn't even want to think about the matter too closely. Bai Xiaochun was very relieved to see Song Ke finally calming down a bit. Care," he said, "there's no need to get so excited. It's just fate that the two of us have met here in the wildlands. You've grown up quite a bit, Care. Getting worked up like this really isn't good for you. Look, you even have steam coming off the top of your head." Without even thinking about it, he reached out to brush Song Q's head free of steam. It was exactly the way he had reached out to tousle Song Q's hair in the past, and Song Ke even reflexively stretched his head forward to meet Bai Xiaochun's hand. However, in that instant, both of them froze. Bai Xiaochun's heart immediately began to pound wildly, and he pulled his hand back. And Song Ke instantly let out a howl that could shake heaven and earth. "This feeling, it's you, Bai Xiaochun. You tricked me. It was you all along." By this point, Song Ke was fully convinced that everything had been an act for his sake. The speed and familiarity with which Bai Xiaochun reached out toward his head had revealed the truth. And the idea of himself being Bai Xiaochun's pet, and that he had reflexively stuck his head out to have his hair tousled, caused masses of white steam to explode from the top of his head. Mind reeling, he let out a howl and then passed out. Stunned, Bai Xiaochun hurried over, pried open his mouth, and shoved a medicinal pill inside. Then he looked over helplessly at Bai Hao and Zhou Yixing. Bai Xiaochun already felt a headache coming on. "It's not my fault. You two helped me figure out what to do." Master, I've already been here for quite a while. I'm pretty sure Senior Gravekeeper is waiting for me. See you later." Bai Hao simply couldn't take any more, and had convinced himself that he had already followed his master's orders. A strange look appeared on his face as he flew toward the underworld river. Zhou Yixing quickly clasped hands to Bai Xiaochun and then followed Bai Hao. The instant he reached the underworld river, both he and Bai Hao began to fade away. As they did, Bai Xiaochun's voice echoed behind them. "Hao, remember to help me track down the other cultivators who were teleported out into the wildlands." Bai Hao voiced his assent in the moment before vanishing. After watching the two of them rush off, Bai Xiaochun looked back down at the unconscious Song Ke. Tousling his hair, he sighed. Whatever. The child just got too worked up, and passed out. That's all. In any case, it's not the first time. Once he wakes up, he'll be fine." After setting up some defensive spell formations around Song Ke, he went back into his immortals cave and sat down cross-legged. He just needs some time to recover. Now that I have 20 colored flame, it's time to push my cultivation base to the great circle of the nascent soul stage. Without any hesitation, he produced his turtle walk and then sent his nascent soul into it. Then he produced his 20-colored flame, which he looked at for a moment, eyes shining with anticipation. As soon as the flame touched the walk, dazzling golden light shone out, enveloping his nascent soul. Then, a shocking energy of heaven and earth began to pulse. Rumbling sounds could be heard, but quickly passed. At the same time, the golden light faded away, revealing a shining, crystalline nascent soul. The nascent soul looked like Bai Xiaochun in every respect, and pulsed with heaven Dao fluctuations. This was the great circle of the heaven Dao nascent soul stage. It was a state of power that could not be compared to anything else in heaven and earth. The air rippled and distorted around the nascent soul as a 10th golden design appeared. Each and every one of the designs on its surface pulsed with shocking magical fluctuations. Furthermore, it was possible to imagine what would happen after the 21-fold spirit enhancement was performed. Those golden designs would merge into a single, violet design. In that moment, something legendary and unheard of would occur. He would become the perfect diva. The legends say that a 21-fold spirit enhancement on your nascent soul will break you through to the diva realm. Whether it's true or not, I'm going to try. Eyes flickering with anticipation, he continued, once Care wakes up, we'll leave the wildlands. And since there's no great wall to go through, we'll have to traverse the Deadmire. After that, I need to get familiar with the formula for 21 colored flame, and find an opportunity to become a diva. At this point, Bai Xiaochun couldn't have been more filled with excited anticipation. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.